Sekeres Price for Thursday, July 4th, 2024. We're coming from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're looking for a space to host your next meeting, call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things. Big show coming up. We'll start with our poll question. We have heard you loud and clear with regards to the state of this defense after July 1st and free agency day. So what should the Canucks do on defense? Sign a puck mover, trade, or nothing? You can vote at Sekeres Price on our X or YouTube accounts. I voted sign a puck mover. Doesn't cost you anything from your current team. And there are a lot of puck movers out there, even if they are imperfect and more third pair guys than second pair guys. What says you, Blake?
Yeah, I think I would probably... I'm tempted to let this start and look for a trade at some point if I'm the Canucks, because I think you're going to get a better quality puck mover if you just are patient. Mm-hmm. And I think this group can probably last you a couple of months. So
like Zadorov last year.
Yeah. So rather than just settle for what's available, and there's some intriguing guys that we're going to get to, I'll be different too, and I'll say wait and make a trade.
Who are you trading? What are you targeting? Second or third pair, and what are you trading?
I mean, you hope for a second pair, but I think the world opens up for you for a third pair as well. I think you can certainly find a third pair. You hope for a second pair. And what are you moving out in order to acquire that? You don't have to move out a ton because they're going to have LTIR space and all that sort of stuff. So if you're bringing in like a $4 million player, you probably only need to move $1 million out. So the world's your oyster at that point. So Niels Höglander would probably do the job at that point.
We're trading Höglander.
Vasily Podkolzin.
Well, for trading Höglander, we got a hole in the top six, do we not?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to rob from one to pay the other.
Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Let's run through some candidates here. Kelowna's Justin Schultz, former West Side Warrior in the BCHL. He's still out there. Finished last year with the Kraken, 19 points, 70 games, 27 points the year before with Seattle. Two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Penguins. They know him. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Does Shattenkirk have anything left?
No.
I don't even want to consider John Klingberg. You've mentioned Tyson Barrie in the past, Victoria's Tyson Barrie.
Klingberg has 2 resurfaced hips, I believe.
Yeah, I didn't particularly like him when the hips
weren't resurfaced. No, you always have surface on your hips, but
whatever.
Yeah.
Original surface, new surface.
Yes,
no
that's
thanks.
right. Yeah.
We've talked about Adam Boqvist.
Yeah.
Oliver Shillington, interesting, but you have to, and you have a lot of empathy for the young man and his battle with mental health, but you have to be sure that he will be available to you.
It's the same as any health battle. Guy has a bad knee, you're reticent. We just talked about the hip resurfacing. This is a health issue. You have to be wary of it in terms of just ability to lean on a guy.
You guys have brought Gustav Lindstrom.
Not you guys. This is a Grady project.
And Blake Price.
No, it's not me.
We're sitting there this morning going, oh, Gustav Lindstrom.
No, that is not the, at least from me, Grady brought up Gustav Lindstrom, and upon a deeper dive on Gustav Lindstrom, for a guy that I'm guessing would go for the minimum, no more than $1 million.
46 games last year between Montreal and Anaheim, 3 goals, 10 points.
Yeah, and on a very bad Ducks team.
Well, a very bad Canadiens team, too.
The numbers are
below. He was plus 12 on that bad Ducks team, and he was even on that bad Canadiens team.
And, like his Corsi for percentage is only 47%, which on a good team, you'd be like, oh, that's not good. But it's a terrible team. So when you're 47% on that, it's not terrible. Goals for, he did very well, goals for and against. He was like a plus 12 on goals for and against. High danger chances was pretty good. His PDO is only slightly above 1.
Right shot, 6'2", 195.
Yeah.
Good hair, too.
So that'd be a project. It's, again, you're not getting Norris Trophy winners at this stage in the game. You're getting hope bets, and I think it's a reasonable hope bet.
What am I missing about Kalen Addison? Right shot, second round pick by Pittsburgh in 2018.
Yeah.
Was part of a deal, I believe the Zucker deal, going to Minnesota. And then Minnesota up and traded him last year to San Jose, who didn't qualify him. He's just 24 years old. Will play almost all of next season at 20.
Did he win the green jacket last year? He might have won the green jacket.
He was minus 35.
Which is big. It's a big number.
Third of a point per game through 150 in the NHL. But, defensemen tend to needs some time.
Also, we were giving Lindstrom a benefit of the doubt because of the team he's on. My goodness, San Jose was not a National Hockey League team.
No.
So he gets a bit of a get out of jail free card there.
Actually, he's minus 38 when you throw in the minus 3 from Minnesota, all told.
That's unbelievable.
Minus 17 the year before.
That is unbelievable. Let's see where
this kid will be under par for his career for some time.
His PDO was 96. Like that 0.96. That is very bad. No saves. There was no saves for Kalen Addison.
No.
And the shooting percentage with Kalen Addison on the ice, 5.56, well below league average. So he was a product of his environment.
These are the guys that are still out there on the market if the Vancouver Canucks are inclined. But as mentioned yesterday, I wanted to take a peek back to Monday and see if there were people that we thought were pretty good bargains that the Canucks might have missed out on. And these guys are a little higher up the food chain than the group that we have just talked about. Sean Walker was on the block seemingly all of last year with the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, he's not a big guy, so if there's an absolute size requirement for Tocchet and Foote outside of the top pair, then I guess he was never an option. And who knows, perhaps he never wanted to play in Vancouver to begin with. But did you see the deal that he signed? And again, this was a guy who would have been in the top 20, top 25 free agents available. He signed a very, for my view, club-friendly deal. 5 years at $3.6 million for a 29-year-old.
The cap hit's wonderful. The term is a bit much, obviously. But there were you mentioned he was on the
signed in Carolina.
You mentioned he was on the trade block. Again, that's to answer the poll question. There's going to be the next Sean Walker, available this year,
right?
So
but you're going to have to give up assets from your organization for him. This was just giving up cap space,
right?
Like when I asked myself the question, would I have preferred Walker to Forbort and Desharnais? Yes. You're a little thinner because you're one defenseman, not two.
He's right shot too, right?
He's right shot.
So he's your
right side.
He's your second pair guy.
Yeah.
Myers bumps down to the third pair, which sounds great.
But then you're still a little vacant on the left side, or at least you have to go sign a guy to play third pair left side.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought that was a tidy contract.
Now it's easy to play those games, folks, because the Canucks have probably found a way to fit Mantha into the deal with the contract.
Well,
but you don't know how these negotiations rolled out, and what one player is willing to take, and one team is not what he's willing to take on another team. So it's hard to know.
And then there's Alexander Carrier, who I thought was a pretty nifty little player against the Vancouver Canucks in free agency or in the playoffs. He hit free agency at 27 years old. So like DeBrusk, amongst the youngest defensemen, he signed for 3 years at $3.75 million in Nashville to stay with the Predators. And again, that's a guy with second pair upside for me.
Yeah.
That's a pretty reasonable contract.
And one of the players that we're mentioning here is going to have a good year. That's the scary part, is that, there is a good player in this midst here of the players still available right now. Like, somebody on this list will have a good season. And the Canucks may want to try to find that guy, or they wait. Or they wait and they pull off another Zadorov deal.
What do you think of Jacob Middleton? He signed a 4-year deal to stay in Minnesota, and he's a tree.
Yeah. What did he sign for?
He signed 4 years. I have it here in a second. 4 years at 4 something.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was in the 4s.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Fair enough.
For a guy that's not special, I don't think.
No.
Size alone isn't a specialty, as we've seen with smaller deals like the Darren deal. So
one of the things I think we got to consider here, because we asked the question about the Vancouver Canucks and have they improved from the lineup that they trotted out in the first game of the Stanley Cup playoffs this past year. And of course, that was the lineup with Thatcher Demko and Brock Besser, who will be back with the Canucks, barring something unforeseen this summer. So one of the things that we talked about at the time, that we talked about in the immediate aftermath of the season, and which is really the gambit going forward here for the Canucks, is where are you vis-a-vis the Edmonton Oilers? And some interesting stuff here in the last 24 hours. Number one, Frank Saravelli reporting Oilers front office really happy Elias Lindholm is out of the division. Of course, had to face him as a Calgary Flame and then had to face him as a Vancouver Canuck. And he was marvelous in the playoffs from a defensive point of view. The Canucks were able to have success against the Oilers, of course, destroyed them in the regular season, and then took them to 7 games with the third-string goaltender for, in my view, 3 principal reasons. Number one, they play great team defense. The 5 skaters they have on the ice really adhere to structure and defensive detail, and I think that helped. Number 2, having the big, rangy defenseman in your own zone, and of course, having the puck on your stick when it's Hughes and Hronek out there on the ice, that helped. I want to say offset or negate, because Connor got his points, but it helped hold the totals down.
Yeah,
for 97, particularly at even strength. And then number 3, because they had matchup centermen. And Elias Lindholm was one of those matchup centermen. Like a right shot centerman who won face-offs and, again, had terrific defensive detail in his game. When you're stacking it up right now, it's a long way from Elias Lindholm or JT Miller or Elias as a matchup center to a Teddy Bluger or a Pius Suter.
Hey, matchup centers or defensively mindful centers are obviously very useful. But Jake DeBrusk comes in with a defensive pedigree that people really appreciate from the wing. Kiefer Sherwood's forecheck is much acclaimed, as is Danton Heinen. Defensively, as a whole, I think you could make the argument on the forward line that you are still better than you were. Even if you've lost the bigger piece, your other smaller pieces are much better than they were a year ago. Plus, your defense still rangy, still big. I think it's I think it's still going to be a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah, two of the 3 boxes are ticked still. But you're not quite the same matchup center.
Also, I'm not saying that quote didn't happen. I'm sure it did. I think it's a quip. I think it's a throwaway line. I think it's an easy, flattering thing to say about a player that's gone.
But I also think it's the truth, Blake.
Well, is he a good defensive center? Yes.
I think they're looking at Calgary and Vancouver now and how they line up down the middle and go, we really like this compared to what we saw last year.
Honestly, I don't think that they've drilled down that far. I don't think they look at the opposition right now and are making that calculus.
You don't think so?
No. I think they just saw the headlines of Lindholm leaving and go, oh, that's good. He played well against us.
Mhm.
I think it's a throwaway clip. Overall, Rick Tocchet and his staff are going to make sure this is a good defensive team.
Mhm.
And if they don't think they've got the horses to be a good defensive team, they're going to tell Patrick Oveen that, and they'll make a change accordingly.
Then there was this from Irf Gaffar. The Canucks were in on Jeff Skinner. Bought out in Buffalo, not because he isn't still a good player. He is, just
not that freight.
$9 million. 46 points last year in 60 minutes a night, scored 24 goals, signs in Edmonton for $3 million. Yeah. And so it's a scenario where you were in there on him. He would have been a nice addition to your club. In fact, really would have rounded out the top six. You could
would have been a great piece.
Fit him beside DeBrusk. And you not only lose out on him, but he enriches your direct competitor.
Yeah. Did he only get the 1 year?
Over. He only got the 1 year.
Gosh. You wonder if
32 years old.
So does he take the 1 year? Like, you wonder here, does he not want the second year because he wants to maybe get one more 3-year contract at the end of this year?
That is possible. That is quite possible.
Play on a offensive team like the Oilers, get your totals back up.
Right.
Have a 58-point year, get a 3-year deal that takes him to retirement.
Yep. Yeah.
Rather than, I
would bet there was something along those lines as a calculation.
So like normally you say, oh, why didn't you just add the second year to get that guy? He may not have wanted that second year.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could say 1 year, 3.8, but then that player starts to lose his value for you.
Instead, the Vancouver Canucks got Danton Heinen and Kiefer Sherwood, and been meaning to play this clip for a couple of days. Patrick Allvin talking about Kiefer Sherwood from Monday. We had all said going into free agency, that's an interesting, sneaky little guy to squirrel away for July 1st because, boy, was he a pain in the ass against the Vancouver Canucks. And it seems our opinion was shared by the Canucks players and mentioned specifically by Captain Quinn Hughes to his GM. Here's Allvin from Monday on the signing of Sherwood.
I think I talked to Quinn here. He was more excited about Sherwood than anyone. He said he pissed the whole team off there in the playoffs. They were playing hard, so he was laughing. He was happy to get him here. I think he's a guy that hasn't played a lot in the National Hockey League regular, and or scouts over the years have liked his ability to score goals as well. So I think he's a guy that can move up and down in the lineup too. I think he's a guy that is really good on the PK, but also he has that shot for potentially or secondary power play.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. Like, there is the potential for Kiefer. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's rose-colored lenses to suggest that you could see a world with increased responsibility where Kiefer Sherwood and Danton Heinen, for that matter, set career. I mean, you could even say DeBrusk. All three guys are candidates to have career highs in goals next year. All three are going to get opportunities more so than they got in their previous stops, I think, because there's holes.
Allvin also talked about LTIR, and we talked about this earlier in the week. Of course, the Canucks have been in LTIR for... Do you remember the last time they were out of LTIR?
No.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
They could fashion a roster right now that keeps them out of LTIR.
Yep. Right. If you stop right now. If you stop right now.
And Allvin talked about that dilemma on Monday about, time to get out of LTIR, or is it time to go out and get another body? Take a listen.
Yeah, I think it's definitely harder to operate in LTIR there. And basically, you set the roster and then it's dollar in, dollar out. It also gives us a flexibility to use more recalls. That's one thing that I feel bad for the younger players that deserve to get more opportunities. And when you're not in LTIR, it gives you a little bit more flexibility of calling up players based on their performance and creating that competition up here with a big team. So definitely that's something that as of today we've got to be careful moving forward here, if it makes sense or not to add a player and then does that mean you have to go back into the LTIR?
Well, last year they were involved in the August bargain bin with Puser and then made some trades in September.
Yeah.
I wonder if he resists the urge to go to the bargain bin in August or even later here in July, whether he still wants to make some of those on the margins trades in September.
And they made a good calculus on the second half of that answer about the call-ups. They made a good calculus. What are the chances anybody down on the farm is going to be banging down the door?
That's it.
Like Archie Bain's got the call up. I mean, he's still a blue-collar worker up in the NHL. They don't have somebody down on the farm that's going to be scoring a goal per game that they're thinking, we've got to get this guy in, but we're cap-strapped.
Right.
They might this year with Lekramaki. They might.
Yeah.
But that's probably not till Christmas. It's probably not till later in the season when you're going to have an injury.
But Blake, that's assuming Vasily Podkolzin is on the NHL team.
Right. Right. We're going to assume that off the bat. But yeah, there's a potential for that, or Ratu. But I don't. I think we know what Ratu.
No, I think
is.
if Ratu, I think he would have gotten a game.
But he hasn't gone on. He hasn't figured out how to be an elite player at the AHL level yet. So that you don't have to necessarily game plan for Ratu going on.
Well, and the other thing here is, if I'm not mistaken, Podkolzin now has to pass through waivers.
Yes.
So this is the time, Vasily. Now it's now or never.
Yeah. And at this point, the next time that Vasily Podkolzin is sent down to the farm, I bet you he gets claimed on waivers, and that will be it.
And we're having this cap talk. And look, there was a time when I think you could argue the Vancouver Canucks had the worst cap management in the league. Some of the contracts they signed, the commitments they made, cap hell was the thing here for several seasons. And so we're reminded of that as we look around the league and cast aspersions. But wow, Detroit is quite a study this summer. You pay a second-round pick to get Jake Wallman off your team, who's a serviceable National Hockey League defenseman making more than $3 million. And did you see what Wallman said upon arriving in San Jose? We're going to have some fun. We're going to grow the game. We're going to celebrate with the gritty. I've already told Macklin Celebrini that. It's our responsibility. How about that? Don't hear that a lot. So they move Wallman out and pay a second-round pick to do it, to create cap space. Then they turn around and sign Vladimir Tarasenko yesterday, 2 years at $4.75 million per. I would like a word or two about whether you thought he would have been a good target for the Canucks. But in order to make room for him, they had to move Robbie Fabry and a pick to Anaheim to get that done. And oh, by the by, with taking on Fabry and his salary, the Anaheim Ducks have now reached the salary floor in the NHL. They're up to about $67 million in commitments. The floor is $65. Prior to the Robbie Fabry deal, Jason Tatum of the world champion or NBA champion Boston Celtics was making more than the entirety of the Anaheim Ducks roster.
How much do you think? I mean, the Red Wings have cap space. They've got two big-time players to sign.
They got that's it.
Seider and Raymond.
Seider and Raymond, they're looking at it and they're projecting and going, we're not going to have the cap space.
They've got
if they don't
$20 million in cap space right now. Those guys aren't taking up $20 million in cap space, are they?
I mean, if they're looking to do the long-term deal and buy out free agency years, and I would suspect they're looking to buy out UFA years with Seider for sure.
Oh, Raymond's a special player too.
Well,
he was so good last year.
Raymond's a winger though. Seider is a number one right shot defenseman with size and offensive ability. Like that is a unicorn.
But a point per game almost play winger.
Was he up to that?
Yeah, 31 goals last year, 75 points, something like that. 72 points. Like it was, and he scored clutch goals for them. Oh my God!
And incidentally, in Detroit, I knew they had moved him on. Do you see Zadina wasn't qualified? He who was selected right before Quinn Hughes.
Wow.
And the Canucks didn't qualify. We talked about Aiden McDonough, Philip Johansson,
Mhm.
the one-time first-round pick of the Minnesota Wild. He was going to be a reclamation project. Didn't qualify. And then, and this was a name that we brought up only because they actually got a player back in the Studnicka trade, who was also not qualified, incidentally. They got a player back in the Studnicka trade, Nick Cisick, the left shot defenseman from San Jose. They didn't qualify him either. He had 14 points in 49 games in Abbotsford this past year and played in the playoffs. Remember, they had the glut of defensemen, so it was like he was going to play. So they didn't qualify him either.
That Gustav Lindstrom guy that we were talking off the top of the show, by the way, he was a non-qualified player for Anaheim. He's only 25.
Yeah.
So
it seemed like there were a lot of those fellows this year.
I think so too. I think they were ruthless. They were more league-wide. GMs were more ruthless on the, I'm just cutting bait on this guy.
And honestly, Blake, we saw a little bit of that the last couple of years, but in part because of the flat cap. And teams just had to watch every penny a little closer and made some harder decisions. I did not see that coming.
Right.
The number of unqualified RFAs this year. I thought it would be a little bit more back to normal.
Everybody
make the safe play, you qualify them with the mini raise.
Right.
And then you make your decision later down the road on them. No, a lot of GMs, a lot of GMs who ended this season angry. Like, no, he can't play. I'm not qualifying.
Well, previously it was I'm not going to overpay for UFA. I've got no cap space. I'll just keep the guy I got. And this year everybody's like, I got cap space. I'm spending it. I'm spending it. I'm not wasting my $1 million on you.
I don't have to watch this stiff play anymore. Yeah. Goodbye.
Development.
Yeah. And development camp is underway. The scrimmage is underway. Our friend Eric Curry down in San Jose.
Yep.
He tells me they nearly sold out the Sharks practice facility, which we've been to before and actually has the Barracuda rink. The HL team plays there. So it's got some seats. It was close to a sellout for the prospect scrimmage there for Macklin Celebrini. They're billing him as a local kid, and fair enough. Like, the family's been down there several years. He, played some grassroots hockey there. They're billing him as a local kid, and the market is eating it up.
That's great. I mean, they need without a new arena, they're going to have to just be a better hockey team.
Yeah.
So,
well, next year they get Draisaitl.
So the story goes.
I think there's a lot of smoke to that.
And
because I think the German owners of the San Jose Sharks are going to say, okay, Mike Greer, we have been very, very, very patient here.
You sign him as a UFA or you trade for him beforehand?
So I don't see Edmonton trading him, because trading him would be surrendering an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. I see Leon Draisaitl's rights being traded at the end of next year, win or lose a cup.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the San Jose Sharks as the most likely destination, even if that means having to surrender a decent pick just to get his rights and talk with him. Then you hole him up in a Munich hotel room and you don't let him leave until he is signed. But actually, San Jose doesn't have a ton of draft capital going forward. They had a hell of a draft, this draft. But I think you'll see San Jose move heaven and earth to sign Leon Draisaitl if he becomes a free agent next summer, which I think he will. I think you could see a record-breaking contract there. They have $43 million committed for next year, Blake, so they have scads of cap space.
I wonder if Draisaitl could set a record for a rights trade at the end of the season.
Yeah. And I think you're going to tell him, Leon, you're going to play number one center until Macklin is a fully fledged NHLer ready for the role and all the matchups. Much like with Connor, you're going to play on Celebrini's wing when we need a goal. You are going to be the face of the franchise. You're going to be the leader in the room, the captain, the whole nine.
Do you think they could pry, like if the let's say the Oilers get busted in the second round next year, so it's mid-May, you've got 6 weeks to negotiate with Leon Draisaitl. Do you think you could trade and get a top prospect from the Sharks?
Well, this is what I'm thinking.
Like, can they get Eklund mid-May?
Well, I mean, we'll see what sort of season the Eklund had, but like, I would not be surprised to see them trade a prospect of substance, even a future first-round pick, something like that, to ensure Draisaitl. They got 2 first-rounders next year, by the way, including the Vegas.
That'll
pick.
be an interesting story to watch. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, put it this way, Blake. Every day that goes by here, because he's eligible for an extension, every day that goes by here between now and next July, Leon Draisaitl gets closer to playing for another team.
Yep. Yeah, you'd have to think. And I honestly think in his own mind, he probably wants to win a cup with Edmonton and then move on. That's probably what he's thinking.
Now, something else that you have been in my ear on over the last few days, maybe the last week.
Well, I've been trying to think, okay, if the Canucks do pull off like, I still think there's a splash somewhere here from the Vancouver Canucks. But how? Like, most of the players that are now on this roster are either doing their job as appropriately according to their cap hit, or have been brought in recently by this administration, and are either a much gloated about player by this administration, or at least performing again appropriately, or in some cases like a Carson Soucy have a no trade clause, full no trade for Carson Soucy. So who's even a possibility, remote as it might be, to be traded in an effort to improve the team, whether it's in this moment or relatively early in the season? It's unlikely to be Brock Besser in order to improve your team, because Brock Besser, even with his contract situation, he's a 40-goal scorer. So, like, you're going to have to bring in a 40-goal scorer to, at least on paper, say that you're improving the team. The only guy that I can come up with that's available to be traded, again, doesn't have trade protection, and gives you a commodity, is Connor Garland. Now, you're going to have to pick up a pretty nice player to call it an improvement, because Connor Garland had a really nice season. But he's not a top 10 player in the league. He's not a top 30 player in the league. So it is possible to do better than Connor Garland.
So is the answer Nikolai Ehlers in Winnipeg, who has, and we've had a broader sort of conversation about, and poor Winnipeg, they were in on a bunch of free agents Monday, and none of them wanted to sign there.
They're left without a chair for the most part here.
A $6 million player as opposed to nearly a $5 million on Connor Garland. Garland's got the 2 years left. Ehlers has the 1 year left before unrestricted free agency. Ehlers plays most of next season at 28. He turns 29 in mid-February. He's coming off 25 goals and 61 points, which is close to his career best. His career best was 84 points in his second season. And the 25 goals is tied for his third best. And in fact, he's kind of been a 20-goal machine when he's played enough games. There's a couple years there on his hockey card where he's got 40-some games, but even in one of those, he hit 20 goals. So he's been a consistent goal every third game guy. It's 201 goals in 605 games. So it's like 26, 27 goals a year.
He's not going to give you the puck battle and the grit that Garland does.
He does not have that. No.
But he's got the potential for way more counting stats than Connor Garland does.
Yeah.
Connor Garland's not flirting with an 80-point season. And if Ehlers put up
Ehlers isn't flirting with an 80 point.
Well, he has done it though, so we know that he's capable of it.
Okay, so he's pretty prorated. He has flirted with 80 points. His best is 64. I think you have to look at him and think of him as a 55 to 65 point guy,
which is,
I think that's your
10 to 20 more than what Garland will do.
Yep.
Which is a significant bump.
Which, look, if you had gotten Jay Gensel, we wouldn't be entertaining this because you would have the elite finisher. But with DeBrusk, who, don't get me wrong, is a good player and can score some goals, I'm not sure you're talking elite finisher there. So if you can't get elite finisher, what's the next best thing? get two guys who are very good finishers.
Yes. And you get Nick Ehlers, and all of a sudden you've got a top six that stacks up with everybody in the league.
Now, look, Winnipeg's got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Number one, they weren't as successful as they had hoped to be in free agency. Number two, for one of the great draft and develop organizations in the National Hockey League, like Winnipeg did a bang-up job of identifying talent, selecting it, and then graduating it to the National Hockey League. And don't get me wrong, there are still some decent-looking prospects in the Jets organization. Brad Lambert, the Finnish/Canadian.
I like Brad Lambert.
One-time first rounder is still there. There's some other guys there that they feel good about. Not to mention, like, they have also done well in graduating guys and just, who aren't flashy players, but play serviceable roles, right? Even going back to guys like Adam Lowry, who's now their captain, but Mason Appleton and some Dave Gustafson, and there's some others there too. Dylan Sandberg this past year. So there's a lot going on in Winnipeg. Ehlers is on the block, but so is Rutger McGroarty.
Mm-hmm.
Their first round pick, 14th overall in 2022, who just seemingly doesn't want to play in Winnipeg. So they've got a lot going on in terms of potential trades they can make. Not to mention, if they were to package McGroarty and Ehlers, that is a huge trade, right? Like, that is a
or
big time.
Ville Heinola too is an option to be packaged up because he's not been developing in that Jets organization.
They rushed him a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
There's another one-time first-round pick. So the notion of trying to poach from the Winnipeg Jets, who are dealing from a position of weakness, because it doesn't sound like Ehlers is going to resign there.
No. So they
which
kick
is
the
why
can.
He's on the block.
They don't get older. They're the same age, the two, Ehlers and Garland.
Well, and of course, the other thing they've got to look at, Nemestikov, Appleton, Iafallo, all unrestricted free agents after this year, along with Pionk, the defenseman. So there are some guys on their team who have been serviceable foot soldiers that may have a desire to return.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can get about your business on those players and commit the cap space there once you've got a solution on Ehlers, once you've got a solution on McGroarty.
And I want to underline this. I'm not chasing Garland out of town. I'm literally looking at the roster going, is there anybody that is tradable? And I honestly think that, tradable for a player of consequence. And my whole point is maybe not they should trade Garland, is he's the only guy. He's the only candidate. And so you just have to be careful that if you're going to make a trade with Connor Garland, that you're getting somebody back. And now this is kind of funny because we are literally 1 year away from a summer in which, Matt, I think everybody would have signed up for a Connor Garland trade.
For sure.
No doubt. Now I'm probably going to get some hate mail on, what are you doing trying to trade Connor Garland? 1 year ago, you would have been fine with it.
No doubt.
So, yeah. That's where we are.
Let's get to today's menu, brought to you by Greta Bar. Greta, great spot to catch the game throughout the season. Quick walk to the Rinker Stadium. Go-to spot, food, drink, and fun. That arcade. The Jurassic Park game. Incredibly popular.
A lot of shooting games that are very popular. Driving games.
Jurassic Park ticked like every box, huh? Blockbuster film.
Mm-hmm. Lunch boxes.
Lunch buckets, trinkets, merchandising. Sequels. Frankly, too many sequels.
Oh, my God.
But revolutionary technology brought to filmmaking, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Theme song. NHL teams, they play the Jurassic Park theme song when they're bringing out
be honest,
an old-timer.
I didn't get sucked in by Jurassic Park. Even the originals.
Not even the original?
No.
Come on.
No.
Everybody got sucked in by the original.
I mean, I was excited to go see it.
It was extraordinary filming. We never seen that before. The scene in the meadow with all the dinosaurs.
Yeah. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy fan.
The big mound of shit there, and she sticks her hand right in it to take a stool sample.
The cup with the ripples in it. The glass there with the ripples with Goldblum.
The eyeball. Goldblum.
It's
Newman.
Goldblum.
Newman in a Jeep sloshing around in the mud
Goldblum does
with
no
that
wrong.
terrifying little dragon that somehow made its way into the passenger seat.
Dinosaur, not dragon.
Well, but it had the hood like the dragon.
Hmm.
I think it's a dragon style dinosaur.
I think it was a raptor, wasn't it?
No, the
No?
one that spits.
Hmm.
That's not a raptor.
Sorry, I'm not a dinosaur nerd.
No, nor am I. I'm no Ross Geller. A really big film. What got us? Oh, yeah. The Jurassic Park game at Greta.
Yeah,
great fun.
There we go. Back on track.
Patrick Johnston's going to join. Rob Williams is going to join. We got our golf report today.
Mm-hmm.
Sad day at Nat Bailey Stadium. We'll get to that in hashtags. All on the podcast side.
We never wrapped up the top story, by the way. And we need to tell you about Foolish Wine has dropped something pretty fantastic.
My bad.
Sign up for Fantastic Wine Club to receive 3 fanciful shipments per year of 9 Foolish bottles, including exclusive merch and first access to limited release wines. You also receive 15% off anytime you want to shop in the tasting room. And you have the unique opportunity to make reservations at all YD Bevco tasting rooms at the Yellow Dog neighborhood or Foolish Wine. So head to foolishwine.com and sign up for the wine.
Have you been to the Wine Village in Oliver?
I've not.
Blake, for somebody who enjoys wine like you, absolutely go to the Wine Village.
You can measure my entire lifetime's worth of time spent in Oliver in under 2 hours.
That's incorrect because you played Incomeep with us last year.
That's exterior of Oliver for sure. Yeah. And Fairview, I guess.
With the pro Todd Tweedy. In fact, I got a very nice note from Todd the other day on my.
I'm going to play that course non-hungover, and I'm going to do a lot better. It's my goal.
Hungover day in the baking sun up top of that bluff is perhaps not the ideal conditions to play Incomeep.
No. Bring your best.
Anyways. So, Bet365 time, bets of the day. And really, the menu runneth over here. You got Copa, you got Euro, you've got MLS, the Whitecaps, you got the Lions and the CFL. You got baseball if you're so inclined. You got hockey futures. We talked about that earlier in the week. I'm going Euro.
Okay.
Won CFL yesterday. I'm going to go Euro today. France has 3 goals through 4 matches at Euro. Portugal is coming off a penalty kick victory over Georgia. France having trouble scoring goals, and I just don't see Portugal winning it easily, right? Like if Portugal's getting through here, it's a slog.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going extra time. It pays plus 200 if we need more than 90 minutes for France-Portugal.
I'm going to soccer tie as well. I'm going to go for tonight's Argentina-Ecuador match.
Really?
Yeah.
Tie?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, if Canada can
Messi is
nearly succumb 2-0 to Argentina, I think Ecuador, who know Argentina, this is an in-conference matchup. They know how they play. No surprises. I think Ecuador can muscle out a tie through 90 minutes, plus 290.
Yeah, tie, of course, being get it to extra time.
In this case, PKs immediately.
That's right.
Yes.
Copa does not screw around. We don't need to subject you to 30 more minutes of this.
And honestly, thank you.
We're going straight to penalties.
Normally we would rage.
Honestly, for that tournament, I'm okay with.
Yeah, it's just mud wrestling. So to limit the mud wrestling to 90 minutes, I think is fair.
Yeah. Very, very well done. I like that. What's it pay again?
Plus 290.
Wow. That's great. Bet365, open an account today at Bet365 and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS all together. All one word. Patrick Johnston coming up next. Hockey season may be over, but it's always a great time at Greta.
air hockey season is never over.
Right.
And at Greta, it's the best air hockey table around, but all the best games. So never mind waiting for somebody else to stage something in Vancouver for you this summer. You can stage your own thing. The fun is always there at Greta.
A quick walk to the rink or stadium. It's a go-to spot before the game, after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. Next beat reporter from the province and Post Media, Mr. Patrick Johnston, after a busy week of free agency. How are you?
I'm good. No bears spotted lately, so I'm feeling comfortable and safe. No bears like on the golf course, no bears in the complex. We're doing well.
Oh, good.
Oh, summer's early yet. Plenty time for bears.
Apparently, if you want not to get completely sidetracked, you cover a rag in bleach and leave it on your garbage, and they don't like the smell of the bleach. So they just leave it alone.
That's a good North Van tip. Yeah, that's a good one.
North Van hacks with Blake Price.
I just heard that.
Your podcast feed. Tell me, which of those contracts they signed on July 1st do you like best and why?
Like best? Well, I mean, I do like, the more I think about it, the more I like the DeBrusk deal. Just the number, the AAV for being what it is. And a guy that's, he scores 25 goals, kind of, rinse, repeat. And he's a good penalty killer, good value player. Obviously not the star they were hoping to land, but for what he brings to the table, for the price point, and realistically, even the term, runs to what, 34? Like, that's a pretty good, honestly, and especially in an environment where, in an inflationary environment, the cap going up means that people are worth more. And, I mentioned this when we go back to look at Tyler Myers. Obviously 3.5 right now is fine. 3.5 when he's 37, maybe not. But also in an inflationary cap environment, that number does change. So, yeah, I think DeBrusk, that it really does stand out to me as a good little deal, even if it's big and it's long.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys signed past the age of 34. A lot of guys with less consistency on their track record as well. Yeah. There's guys that are coming off of good years, or 2 years ago had a good year, but this guy's pretty consistent. And he also is good defensively, which raises the floor on exactly how bad the signing can be.
Yeah, exactly. And, you compare this to the long deals of years past. Louis Eriksson and Jay Beagle, or any of those Jim Benning deals. He never had a deal like this. This is a bet on a player who's still in the prime of his career and has been doing things really well. Louis, even at the end, Louis Eriksson, sure, he could kill penalties, but he couldn't do anything else. Jake DeBrusk is probably still going to be a pretty useful player at the end of this contract. Will he be the current player? No, but you're paying for what he can do right now, and what he can do right now is a lot. And you would hope make Elias Pettersson back to what Elias Pettersson can be.
Do you want to know a real scary thing, guys? Do you want to know a real scary thing?
Go ahead.
What are we, 9 years after the Louis Eriksson signing? Something like that? If a player with Louis Eriksson's resume, Louis Eriksson just finished that season with the Bruins. If somebody gave him 6x6 today, 9 years later, it would probably be like a reasonable deal.
Yeah.
How crazy that deal was back then. That's a reasonable price to pay for a guy coming off a 30-goal season, in which it was an outlier season for him. That's how scary that contract was.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because you mentioned it, Patrick, and I've heard it now from several directions. Jake DeBrusk was like a third-string penalty killer for Boston the last 2 years and didn't kill penalties previous to that.
Sure.
Is he going to kill penalties here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joshua, Oman, Pettersson, Suter are the four guys they used the most last year, not including Elias Lindholm. So we anticipate DeBrusk is going to
take over Oman's spot. You want your better players.
Oman, except Oman, he's not great at draws, but he is a natural centerman.
Yeah, but in the end, he'll take Oman's slot. Oman's back to number 13 on the depth chart.
Yeah.
Listen, it's not a certainty. Dakota Joshua kills penalties. Like, he's in the mix. Listen, I'm not saying the biggest reason he's coming here is to be a penalty killer. It's just something he does.
Yeah.
He's not bad at it.
Would anybody be surprised to see DiGiuseppe in the opening night lineup instead of Podkolzin because of penalty killing? And
I
he
mean,
would be one of the first 4 over.
Just because he's safer than Bud Colson, perhaps. If Bud Colson has a great preseason, that could change.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Bottom line is here, Patrick. Once again, there is opportunity for Vasily Podkolzin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
needs a big summer.
This is kind of it, right? Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm glad you brought up to Giuseppe just for the point, like he in the end was the guy who got back in the lineup, right?
Yeah.
He played a lot in the playoffs, partly because of just the heart and hustle. And they've been really trying hard with Podkolzin to desystemize him, I guess is the best way to put it. Because you watch him play, he does all the right things, and then he realizes what's the safe play. And it's not that they don't want him to do the safe play. They just know that he could also choose the exciting play, and they know he could do it. And so it is a bit about finding the player's confidence, helping him rediscover what he can be, because he spent so long trying to play it safe, trying not to screw up, trying to be the good soldier. And this is obviously a massive season for him. Because they need him to be the guy they drafted him to be, which is a solid middle of the lineup winger and a guy that potentially could be a penalty killer. Like a guy that brings something more than just being on the roster.
I wonder if him being a teenager in Russia playing pro, where they barely give you ice time.
Oh, it was massive.
Scares you into
terrible.
Not make a single mistake, or else I'm out of the lineup, or else I'm getting 1 minute a game. And he strikes you as a guy that's just like going to do my duty, sir, and nothing more.
There was no way around it because he was already signed to a contract when the Canucks drafted him. But I can tell you that there are people on this staff right now that were aghast when they discovered that he'd been left behind in Russia for 2 years.
Yeah,
because they're just like, you don't do anything. You sit at the end of the bench. You're scared of the coach. He spent 2 years not being the guy. Then he came over. Then the coach was fired. Then he has a new guy who. Like Boudreau, we forget Bruce Boudreau actually got a lot out of him late in that first season, and he seemed to be finding his way. And then the team was a mess. Boudreau went away from him. He lost his confidence again. They got him out of the environment. He sort of got better back in the AHL. Then he went back to the AHL. A lot of what's has been trying to get him to find his way back to who he was when he was 18. And he got to be the man on his team night in, night out. And he's not going to be the man, but they want him to have that mentality. They want him to get back to where he was when he was drafted, which was, you are a good player and you are allowed to go out and do stuff.
Stuart Smalley, I'm good enough. I'm strong enough.
Exactly.
100 people like me.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a situation that it's a big year for him, and they need him to find his way. I think a lot about that. There was I don't know, maybe it was on your show. I don't know. Years ago, talking about a former winger on this team drafted very high in the first round. And Ray once said, if you don't start doing more, pretty soon they're going to start asking you to do less. And we now know where Jake Virtanen is.
Yeah.
And, to me, that is such a thing to remember with a young player. You need to start finding ways to do more.
Yeah, he's like a prophet.
Heinen or Sherwood, which one of those wingers in the deal do you think is better?
Should be Heinen. I'm more intrigued by Sherwood just from what I saw him do in the playoffs. Obviously, he's really a fourth liner, but the energy, the annoyance that he brings to the game is going to be fantastic. Heinen, I mean, the Canucks were close to speaking to Jake Virtanen. The Canucks were close to. I think we talked about this in the COVID season. The Canucks were close to trading for him. They were close to flipping Jake Virtanen. Now, it would have been a shuffling the deck kind of situation, not exactly a change given where Virtanen's game was that year, and where Heinen's game kind of has been. But a smart player, he's got some skills. You kind of look at him, you're like, could he be a bit more exciting, a bit more flashy? Sure, that's something. But here he is. He's built a decent little career, and he's going to be a useful player he should be a useful player on this team. Nothing is certain, obviously. But a player that I appreciate why this management group would like. The question is, how much sort of energy is he going to bring to the table? Hometown guy, and You would expect he'll be excited to play. I mean, we've seen what that's done for Noah Juleson. He's found his way playing at home. And, can Danton Heinen find a new added element to his game just because he's playing in front of his buddies every night?
The Canucks only had 5 wingers that scored double digits last year.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if, like, there was, Kiefer Sherwood scoring 10 or 11 goals on the fourth line. Like, that'd be nice. Like, it'd be nice if a fourth line winger had double-digit goals, because other teams have that. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Heinen scored 7. I mean, he's another guy, like, did score 17 goals. He scored 18 goals in his first season in Pittsburgh. Like he's had a couple seasons. His first season in his rookie season in Boston, like, pretty solid. You could see the appeal. The guy that scored at sort of, when he's been on his game, has scored at kind of a low end second line, high end third line rate. The skills are there. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And can he be a diamond in the rough for this team? Maybe. I mean, he's 28 now, so or in fact, it's his birthday tomorrow, so he's 29. He is what he is, but he's not going to hurt you. He's a handy player. You need guys in the lineup like this. It's another decent bet, I think, by this management group. Can he find 15 goals? That would be great for this team.
July 5th must be the best birthday when you're growing up as a kid. School is out. Not everybody is fled. All your friends can attend a massive birthday party in the nice weather.
I think the June 5th birthday is the best because your friends are still in town, right? Like, the problem with July 5th is some of your friends have gone.
Do people scatter that quickly?
Yes.
Oh
yeah. Certainly, that was my experience growing up.
See, we only went on vacation in August, and only if we were good.
Tough life in Ottawa. Holy smokes.
Well, hey, you had to earn vacation in our household. Forbert or Desharnais, which one do you like better there?
I mean, Forbert, I guess, if you have to sort of make me give an answer. I'm not.
Don't be too enthusiastic on that one.
Neither. I'm not enthusiastic. And Forbert's fine. There's a guy he has NHL experience. He's fine. Desharnais, I'm intrigued to see what happens here because, for what Rick Tocchet seems to want, which is guys that can move the puck pretty well, that's certainly not what Desharnais has been known for. So we'll see how it plays.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I will admit that Desharnais signing was the one that surprised me the most. Just given how it's sort of outside of what they've been looking for. I get they want kind of a guy that plays with some piss and vinegar, and he certainly plays with piss and vinegar. But yeah, I guess if you've asked me which guy is sort of the most sort of reasonable NHLer, it's Derek Forbert.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm ready to be surprised.
Yeah. Last question. It's our poll question. What should the Canucks do on defense? Sign a puck mover here, make a trade, or do nothing? Just roll with this and see what you got.
Well, I think when I was poking around mid-season, they certainly were still interested in finding another puck mover, certainly, hopefully on the right side. Although at that time, I didn't know what that meant for Philip Hronek. Obviously, Philip Hronek is now here. But is there anybody else in this roster that you can really play with Quinn Hughes? And I don't know if you're going to find anybody now to play with Quinn Hughes. I would like to see them find another defenseman who can move the puck. I in the big picture, I think that is what they need the most. Mm-hmm. The guys that I really liked all are gone. So I'm intrigued to see what they come up. I mean, I actually think I wasn't surprised that they ended up where they've gone, which is that they do actually have a bit of cap space right now. I found myself wondering, and I didn't say this aloud to anyone, and so that's, blame me. But I found myself thinking, once we started seeing maybe the likes of Gensel and Reinhardt and Stamkos, we're going to end up somewhere else. And there weren't quite at that high-end wingers available that they'd been hoping for. I did find myself wondering if they were going to go to that second sort of, you asked me about this last week, that second-tier winger. And I ended up coming around to that idea. And really, you know what? Because if they can sit on a little bit of cap space, I mean, that was their problem this past season. They couldn't flex themselves around. They couldn't get Chris Tanev because they needed more cap space. They ran out of cap space. And so if they can accrue some cap space, and it's something that Patrick Elvine mentioned during the season, if they can do that, if there's a way they can make this all work, they're in I don't think they're going to be in the high flying position they were last year, but if they're in, they want to be in the playoff hunt, they'll be in the playoff hunt. There's no doubt this team's going to be in the playoff hunt.
By the way, before you leave us and think that I'm crazy, they had 7 wingers, not 5, that had double digits. For some reason on Canucks.com website, when you go to last year's stats, they've deleted anybody that is no longer on the team from last year's stats for some reason.
You never go to team websites.
So it's the NHL. Listen, I will give the Canucks a pass on that one. That's the NHL.com website with a Canucks branding on it. It's not the Canucks' fault on this.
So you never go there. You always go to.
Well, what's the point of that?
One of the big aggregators.
It's the data. No, it's how it's 100% like how their database works. So I'm giving you a pass on this one. It's not. It's how the NHL's database works and how that website, the Mass website, works.
Anyhow, double-digit goals by a fourth liner would still be nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, they got 11 from Mikheyev.
I don't think they have.
They got 13 from Lafferty. So
yeah, those were playing on the fourth line.
Christ. It was great seeing you, Candace, and the children, and Nat Bailey on
It was
Saturday.
wonderful.
Yep. You're not going to Jay's in Seattle, are you?
No, but I will be at Jay's in a couple weeks at the Rogers Center.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
You enjoy your weekend.
You guys enjoy your weekend too. Don't get a sunburn. Don't forget the top of your head, Matt.
I have hair, Patrick.
It's me. Yeah.
I know.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
This is the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports vertical, Rob the Hockey Guy on Twitter. And he joins us Thursdays. How are you?
Great. I'm catching my breath after the last 10 days or whatever it was in the NHL. I think I listed it all out on Twitter the other day. In 9 days, we went from they handed out the Stanley Cup, they gave out the NHL awards. We had 2 days of drafts. They started free agency and basically signed everyone immediately because everyone in the league is tampering, obviously.
And they want to start their summer sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that too. They revealed the schedule. What else have I missed? Reinstated all the Blackhawks,
yes.
Sexual assault issues there. I was
Stanley Cup parades. There was a Stanley Cup parade on the beach in Lauderdale.
I was laughing like 5 minutes before free agency open. I'm in the war room here, ready to like cover all the signings and everything, and they announce these are the 32 home openers for the season, and I was like, "There's no time. Nobody cares. This is not going to be something."
At this point,
no time
material.
And speaking of burying your own material, they revealed all of the first players for the Four Nations tournament on draft day.
It would have been a very easy August story for them.
July 15th
in the headlines.
Yeah.
And I don't think people care about this tournament yet. So they got some work to do on this. Like I think it's great. Like best on best hockey. We haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah, like they've got some work to do here. So
it's funny because I think it was Jay Fresh, a link the other day, like, pick your team Canada. And so I clicked it and I started going through, and I think I got to 7 forwards. You need 14. And I was like, you know what? No, I don't care enough to go through this exercise. If it was the Olympics, I would have cared enough to go through the exercise.
Yeah. But at the same time, like I was looking at it the other day, our clicks are higher for the last 2 weeks than they were during the playoffs. like people are consuming all this material.
Oh, absolutely. But I think, from a Canucks fan perspective, it's been all about free agency, right? Like the draft was kind of like, we kind of just brushed over the draft. Like, thank God the Canucks didn't have a first round pick. I really wouldn't have had a weekend, right? Like, but yeah, like, I mean, that was all in one long weekend, right? The draft and free agency. And then we came back on Tuesday and went, whoa, what happened? So, but yeah, I think for Canucks fans, it was all about free agency. It was all about what they were going to do, who was available, who were they going to bring back, and yeah, I don't know your guys' thoughts on how it all went. I think it went like okay. It was like, you know, they didn't, you know, I was wondering if they were going to land Gensel like everyone else. And, you know, once Gensel and Tanev, I think, were off the board going into it, starting to see like the first contracts trickle through, I was getting pretty nervous that they were going to do something really stupid. I don't think they did something really stupid. This, you know, DeBrusk's contract length makes me a little nervous. I don't know if they did enough, but you know, I think it was fine.
They were busy enough. They kept people's attention, and they've addressed some needs. What did you hear back from your readers? Do you think people generally are okay with what happened?
I think so. Yeah, I think Canucks fans are. I think there's, you know, there's a. I think the question is on defense, of course, and I think there's a lot of Zadorov fans that were upset that he left, and so maybe saw his deal in Boston and thought, well, why couldn't the Canucks do that? So I think there is an element of that. For me, I think I really like the Danton Heinen addition. You know, I think they got really good value on that contract, and you know, Patrick Allvin and Heinen himself have you know, effectively admitted that he took less money to come to Vancouver. So you get a bit of a hometown discount there for the Langley product. Kiefer Sherwood, I think the more I hear from him and read up on him and look at what he's done, you know, a short career, even though he's in his late 20s, that sounds like a Rick Tocchet kind of guy if I ever heard one. I mean, listening to his interview, he was like, he more than most players, I think, really knows what he is, right? Like, he was talking about identity and like just how he's going to fit in and what he does, you know, to make his teammates better. I really like that. I like a player that there's no question that they know what they're good at and how they can affect a hockey game. DeBrusk, I'm not sure of. I mean, I think, you know, we've heard for the past few years the trade rumors, the benchings in Boston, so it was sort of an up and down time with the Bruins. So I'm not entirely sure on that one. And then you commit 7 years. But I think you had to get someone. I don't think you could have gone through free agency and just went, okay, you know, maybe Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland are your second line wingers now. I don't think you could do that. So I think you had to find someone. At least the AAV is not bad, but the term is long. So I think that's the concern right there.
Ask you the poll question: what should they do on defense here? Sign a puck mover, make a trade, do nothing. What do you think?
Yeah, or Noah Strang wrote a piece for us on Daily Hive yesterday. 7 puck moving defensemen they could still sign in free agency. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, they need a puck moving defenseman, but like, I don't know that like, I don't know that they need a third pair puck mover. Like, I think they need a top 4 guy, right? Like, they need someone that can play bigger minutes. If you look at I was concerned about the Canucks going into last season with their defense. And I think what they did was they effectively had that super top pair that plays 24 minutes a night. And then they had 2 good third pairs, right? And I think going to this season, you could see them doing the same thing, but they don't have 2 good third pairs. They've got 1 good third pair. You know, if you pair Myers and Soucy together, I think as a third pair, that's a very good third pair. Is it a second pair though? Because now when you've got, I mean, their third pair now, I guess, is Forbort and Desharnais. I don't know. I think that's more of a like middle of the road, low end third pair, right? Yeah. So I think that's where you're at right now, where last year they could play Hughes and Hronek 24 minutes and everyone else kind of played 17, 18 minutes. Now, if you've got Desharnais and Forbort on that third pair, like, how many minutes can you play them? Are they going to, you know, if you look at what they have played in recent years, like that's a touch high for them. So now are you starting to ask Myers and Soucy to start playing
20,
you know, like 20 minutes to 21 minutes? Like, that's where you really get into trouble. So I think you either have to try to recreate what you had last year. I think, this is not a popular opinion in Vancouver. I think they were too quick to punt out Ian Cole. I think Ian Cole would make me a lot more comfortable on this defense if you had Cole rather than Forbort in there. There is still time though. You can still upgrade. I'm not saying like Cole was like the ideal fit, but I think he's a guy that has played top 4 minutes for many years, and if he can hang on for one more year, I know he had a bad series against Edmonton, but I'm looking at the totality of his season. I thought he had a fine season for the Canucks and was a big reason for their turnaround on the back end.
Yeah, it's about having options too. You're probably not going to get a $5 million puck moving defenseman. You just don't have the cap space, and I don't think they've got the parts to move out to create cap space. But if you've got a quiver of different arrows back in the 5th, 6th position, maybe that's the safer way to go if you're the Canucks.
Yeah, and you were asking earlier about like what our readers are saying, and I think a big thing with Canucks fans right now is there's a lot of trust with this coaching staff. And I think there's a lot of like, okay, well, you know, and also with this management group. And I think there's
management too, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, you know, the sense of, okay, management has identified these guys and the coaching staff can fix them and they can turn these guys into something else. I mean, great if that is the case, but let's see it, right? I think that, you know, I'm not quite convinced on that with their defense group. I do think Forbort, if you look at Forbort, I think that was a good addition, and I think that, you know, it's a low cost acquisition, and this is a guy that had some injury troubles last year, so maybe you get him when his price is down a little bit, and he can maybe, you know, bounce back to what he was previously, and maybe he was playing a smaller role in Boston because they had a deep defense. So I think that's entirely possible. But yeah, I'm not sold on this defense yet. I think they do need to, you know, look to make some, you know, to make some kind of acquisition. I think look at what they did last season with Zadorov. They didn't pay through the nose to get Zadorov. Zadorov was playing third pair minutes in Calgary, and you bring him in and he ends up being, you know, a pretty big part of your blue line, especially in the playoffs.
All right. In conclusion here, Rob, not to go all basketball Phil on you and influence or steer your editorial judgment or coverage at the Daily Hive or Offside, but are you dispatching young Noah to Seattle this weekend for the annual Canadian Blue Jays invasion?
We are not dispatching him to Seattle this weekend. I'm sorry.
Think of the clicks. Think of the color. Think of the video, the photos, the everything at your disposal in SoDo when it turns Canadian July 5th to July 7th, and we all enjoy a weekend at Rogers Center West.
I was there last year. It was a great time. It's funny though. I just about forgot that it was this weekend. The Jays have just been so brutal this year that I think I wonder. I mean, I think there'll still be a buzz, of course, but yeah, it's just sort of it's been a weird year for the Jays. They kind of just
it's been a dreadful year.
Off. Yeah,
a dreadful year.
They've fallen right off the map.
So far, it's a really good year for the M's. I mean, this is a magic trick, for heaven's sakes, to be that bad at hitting 1 through 9 and to be in first place. I mean, we could go a long, long time. This is the worst hitting Mariners club in the history of the franchise, and they're in first place with cushion.
Guys, I've got my eyes are set on the Copa America right now. I haven't got time for the.
Oh,
that's where I'm going next here. I want to see Canada get into the semifinals of the Copa.
Well, it's a marvelous sports weekend any way you slice it. Thank you for the time, Rob Williams. You have a good week, and we'll catch up next Thursday.
Sounds great.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow. Sekeres Price from Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680, the Grey Clips text message inbox. Time now for the Golf Report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Off to an incredible start here for 2024.
Oh, I wish it was there.
On a day like today,
Oh, I wish it was there.
amazing reviews on course conditions and service. The views are pretty darn good, too, in the golf course. That's the star of the show. And we're reminding group organizers of 12 or more, it is not too early to book your September or October corporate or buddy trips. The prime times are filling up fast. You, the group organizer, you got 12 or more, you play for free. Tell us about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups.
You play in September, of course, you get the first few frostings on the mountains. So you're teeing off and you get fresh snow. It's pretty cool.
It's a pretty amazing place to play golf. And we had the distinct pleasure a couple of weeks ago with General Manager Chris Manson, and we were talking about this PGA Tour schedule, and I think we were heading into the U.S. Open that week when we played with him. And he said, isn't this crazy? Like, it's Father's Day. It's not even summer, and we're going to be through 3 of the 4 majors with the way they have gone about scheduling these days on the PGA Tour. And the discussions around it, like, why would you want those tournaments in the heart of hockey and basketball playoff season where you push them back? You have a freer sports schedule the world over. I mean, you don't have Copa and Euro each and every year. Now, of course, they're trying to avoid competing with the National Football League in September. But, here's the problem, Blake. You have the U.S. Open. You have an elevated event thereafter. And now you're in a period where you have the Rocket Mortgage Classic, the John Deere Classic, the Scottish Open against an off-field event. So you're like sacrificing 3 weeks here.
Yeah.
When the sports schedule really dies down.
I mean, you could argue it's the heat of the summer and guys don't like to play in the heat maybe, but
please.
But
it's
I mean,
golf.
Yeah, I mean, it's
in the heat.
It was always us as well. It's always been like this. So, yeah, they've shot themselves in the foot. They've made the bad stops on tour even worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing they've done, Blake, is because these non-elevated events now have to fill out the field, they're giving opportunities to guys to accumulate PGA Tour and points and world golf rankings that continuously get them into more and more events. And they're sacrificing a little bit of the kill what you eat, always have the PGA Tour professional who's an independent contractor, right? Fighting for their survival, fighting to make the next cut and the next cut, which brings me to Justin Rose and the Open Championship. Because Justin Rose is a major champion, a U.S. Open. He's an Olympic gold medalist, 11 PGA Tour wins, and 11 wins on the European Tour as well. 20 top 10s and major championships in his career. And he had to qualify for this Open Championship, and he did. He shot 68-68. He was the co-medalist, securing a spot in his 21st career Open Championship.
It's the Open Championship version of the Adam Scott story that we were telling for the
U.S. Open. And we mentioned this because, of course, Justin is England's Rose, going back to 1998 at Birkdale when a young, scrawny kid, holed out on the final hole, much to the delight of the British public. He first tried to qualify for this event at 14 years of age, and he finished second to Francesco Molinari at Carnoustie several years ago. The Open Championship this year is at Royal Troon. 2 weeks from today it starts. When last there, with all due respect to the famous duel in the sun, Nicklaus and Watson, perhaps the finest round of major championship golf ever played. Henrik Stenson fired an 8 under 63 that day, tying a major championship record to outduel Phil Mickelson in the same pairing. You may remember Mickelson went 6 under that day, lost by 3. They were 11 strokes better than third place. It was an absolute spectacle to watch those two guys shoot the lights out at Troon. I want to go back to something I mentioned to you last year when the Open made its way back to St. Andrews. Blake, are some of these Rota courses getting a little too easy and becoming effectively pitch and putts for tour players? And we know they're rolling the golf ball back, so perhaps this is
it's temporary.
8 of the last 9 champions of the Open Championship have been 12 under or better. The only exception is the aforementioned Molinari, 8 under at Carnoustie, and Carnoustie still remains Carnoustie and the toughest golf course in the world when the wind is blowing. But of course, they don't have a lot of room typically to extend holes on these.
But global warming has a lot to do with this. When is the last time we saw them in toques and wincing?
There's that too.
We have not seen that. It's looked like summer for every one of these Open Championships, year after year. Like, we grew up wondering what month it is. And in fact, it used to make me sad when it was in August, the Open Championship. And it made me think,
you guys in Dukes, it made me sad too.
Well, it made me sad because it'd be like, oh shit, school's coming. Like, you know, like I guess summer's over. If somebody's wearing a toque somewhere in the world right now, that means summer is over.
Well, in the Northern Hemisphere, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, we just don't see that anymore. And that has been part of the defense of those courses for centuries, decades anyway.
Hey, it's the 152nd Open coming up.
We're almost centuries.
A century and a half.
Yeah.
And this, Blake, is why I am for the toughest, meanest, nastiest U.S. Open courses going. Because the Open Championship has lost some of its bite. Yeah. The Open Championship has lost some of its bite. The PGA now is typically played in places that scoring is available, and really unless you get weather days at the Masters, they're scoring available to you there. So I do like that the US Open stands out as the most rigorous test in golf. Hey everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.